So, if you've been paying attention to the discourse around video games online, basically the past week, I'm sure you're very familiar with the fact that players have discovered that Sony has added a new DRM to their games, especially digital games, purchased after the beginning of April 2026. A lot of people were confused, but essentially what it boiled down to was if you have a digital game that you purchased after the beginning of April 2026 and you don't connect to the internet within a 30-day period, you will no longer be able to launch that game, which of course was very disappointing. Nobody wants to potentially run into a situation where they don't have Wi-Fi for an extended period of time. They're traveling, they're just not able to connect their game to the internet, and they lose access to something that they bought. We talked about it in the last video that this is really an example of the frog in boiling pot of water. If you put a frog into hot water, it instantly jumps out. But if you put a frog into room temperature water and you slowly crank up the heat, it doesn't get out and it dies. And that's kind of feels like what's happening with our video games in a lot of ways, but certainly here where less and less are we actually owning these games. But we have finally gotten some clarification on this issue, and it wasn't exactly what we thought it was. So let's head over to gamefile.news and Steve Totillo, who's a very good source. If you're looking for someone to follow on video game news, go ahead and follow him. He always has pretty solid stories. So, it says Sony clarifies recent PlayStation DRM update. PlayStation fans and game preservationists have been alarmed since late last week with a new 30-day timer attached to newly purchased digital games for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, which might render those games unplayable if the system they're on is offline for longer than a month. But a rep from Sony told GameFile today that the new system will require only a single online check before it functions as a perpetual license for the digitally purchased game. This is consistent with a newer theory that emerged by gamers testing the 30-day timer over the last 2 decades. Players can continue to access and play their purchased games as usual, a rep for PlayStation told me over email. A one-time online check is required after purchase to confirm the game's license, after which no further check is needed. The rep's explanation squares with the current understanding among players about what's happening. The multi-day mystery. A post last Friday by YouTuber Lance McDonald spread awareness over the 30-day timer. Quickly, players began stress testing the system, removing a battery within their PlayStations and checking what would happen if their system were offline past the timer window. They noticed that the settings on a PS4 or PS5 to be the primary console, a common Sony authorized method to retain rights to digital game, wasn't overriding the 30-day limit. On Tuesday came the breakthrough. A gamer called And Shrew on Reset Era forums posted the result of some testing. They found that digital games purchased on the PS4 and PS5 after some time in mid-April would get a 30-day timer that could then be removed and replaced with a perpetual license that would allow the game to be played offline. The transition to the perpetual license occurred some number of days after the digital game was purchased and the system was connected to the internet. They believed that a PlayStation online check-in would trigger the license change no sooner than 15 days after the user had purchased the game. This synced with the theory that Sony's new system is related to the 14-day window that the PlayStation users have to request a refund for a digitally purchased game. The new timer check-in system could be a way to defeat some exploits in that refund system, some users theorized. In a follow-up, I asked the Sony rep if the 15-day timeline is accurate or if the perpetual license can be activated sooner after purchase. If they share more, I'll update this post. Sony has not yet said that they've introduced the timer, or not yet said why they've introduced the timer and whether it's designed to stop people from exploiting the refund system, but their explanation suggests that the new DRM method should not result in long-term loss of access to digitally purchased games just because the PlayStation offline for a month or Sony servers are down. And then it goes in to talk about what we talked about in the last video, where Xbox flashback for many some gamers. The initial reporting of the 30-day timer conjured memories of Microsoft's disastrous May 2013 announcement of the Xbox One, which was going to require an connected check-in once a day, lest your games become unplayable. After widespread backlash, Microsoft abandoned the plan ahead of the Xbox One's launch. So, obviously a lot to take in there. First and foremost, very glad that this seems to just be a temporary thing to try to combat piracy. I think all of us are, legitimately trying to buy their games, not the people who are trying to skirt around the system and take advantage of Sony's refund policy, are fine with this. As long as we get to keep the digital games, this is something that we can live with. I think the bigger problem for Sony in this is they took so very long to talk about this at all. It was like they were intentionally avoiding it, which made people speculate, the worst. They thought that this is going to be a worst case scenario, that Sony is doing this kind of anti-consumer move, and they're, in a way, kind of screwing over the gamers. Now, that wasn't the case, and of course, because it wasn't, had to make a video on it. What are your thoughts about this whole situation? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. We have new videos coming out all the time here on the Wiki Get Everything channel. Also, check out the Those Fake Nerds channel. I'm uploading it to both, so if you're watching on the other one, go check out the other one. But other than that, check out our sports channel, Wicked Sports, if you're into sports news, and our podcasting channel, Better Radio. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching on the Those Fake Nerds channel, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers. We're so close. We're like 2 away right now, and I would love to pass that mini milestone. Not the biggest milestone, but a milestone nonetheless. If you're watching on the Wiki Get Everything channel, we're almost at 1,700 subscribers. Please subscribe there. And again, thank you for watching.